Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Mail. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. That's from a guy, I'm guessing he's probably in his early 50s to mid 50s max. And he's sharing his story about events that happened a long time ago when he was 34 years old and married to his first and only wife. You're going to see in this story, guys, how ultimately he comes up with quite the solution to make sure she ends up with nothing after he discovered that she was cheating on him. This guy at an early age was very successful, started his own company. It was actually a contracting construction business, which some guys have done from an early age, as I have heard these stories and all. Made a lot of money early on, and instead of letting her get it, pretty much goes scorched earth, if you will, to make sure she didn't get a dime. Now you're going to see in this entertaining story here that, and I will point this out at the end, there are a few elements to this that has me scratching my head, to wonder if some elements are true or questioning his motives behind this. But then again, I've lived long enough, truth is stranger than fiction, and I'll address those things at the end here. But nevertheless, it is an entertaining story about a guy who definitely, well, let's just say she's taught quite the lesson. So it starts off, says here, hi SSM. This will probably be a pretty short story as I'm not much of a writer, and I made my escape pretty fast. My wife, who is 29 and me 34, were together for 6 years, married for almost 2. Luckily, there were no kids, as I was still focused on growing my company and want to be able to retire early, or at least cut back massively to spend time with my future kids. Well, man, it's actually very good you didn't have kids with her, and I'm sorry things didn't go the way you wanted, but my wife seemed to be nothing but green flags. She'd tell me if she went to happy hour after work and to join them or pick her up. She always dragged me along if she went out for a late night drinking or dancing with the girls. She even ditched a couple of friends who were cheaters because she didn't want to be around that type of person. So you can see her in the beginning, whether it was when he was first married or the years leading up to marriage, she seemed to hit all the checks on the boxes, you know, like you mentioned here. So he had no or little reason to worry or look for red flags. He says, well, one night about a decade or two ago, she told me she was going out. I said I would go with her, and she responded, girls only, and smiled and ran out the door. By the time it hit me how odd that was, she was already driving off. I woke up to some dark colored muscle car peeling out, and my wife stumbling back at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I have to wonder, was she on her best behavior early on to get you to marry her? She obviously knew you owned your own company, obviously knew you had wealth. Best behavior, and once she got a number of years in, then she could start in on the bullshit. None of her friends I knew had a car like that, plus she was sweating like crazy before jumping in the shower, and that set off alarm bells in my head. I see her phone and decide to start snooping. Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning, muscle car, she's sweating, jumps in the shower. Gee, nothing to see here. I bet your ass you're going to start snooping. The text messages on her phone were clean. It was MySpace that I found her messaging some random guy. MySpace, huh? So you know we're going back in time 15 years or more. And she was sending intimate pictures of them together. As I was snooping, the affair partner messaged what a good time he had and hoped to do it again. Then he asked if I had any clue, as in he was asking her if her husband knew. I took screenshots and emailed myself the proof to show my lawyer in the morning. Well, how nice this guy owns his own business. When you own your own business, you're going to have a lawyer handy that he can consult right away. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer and we discussed exactly how the divorce would go and how much the cheating wife would get. Even with a pretty good prenup and separate bank accounts and the house and company being premarital assets, she'd still be getting a large chunk of the change. Well, that's a big load of bullshit given you're married to her for 2 years. She was cheating on you, you had the proof, and still this is what would happen. Then I asked, what if I sell it all off and all the assets I own and just take a long vacation and never come back? Well, it would be relatively difficult and time consuming, but you'd likely get more money if your accounts are still here. But if you had new accounts elsewhere, she would have a hard time tracking you down and draining the accounts. Well, if the shoe fits, wear it. I was coming up with a plan to finish up the few projects my company was working on and sell everything off. I tell my wife I bought a new house and we were going to move into after complete renovations. Now, being in the construction business, she knows I've always bought fixer-uppers and done my own renovations, so this wasn't too suspicious and gave me an excuse to stay there. When she asked to see it, I put a fake smile on my face and said it was a surprise, and she didn't get to see it until it was finally finished. She's probably thinking, okay, and while you're gone, I'll keep hooking up with Mr. MySpace. That's it. She's hooking up with Tom from MySpace. Remember Tom? Everybody had Tom as your friend on MySpace? Of course, it was a lie, and the new house was just a 3-month rental that I had overpaid for her to get away from her, and eventually I would trick her into moving into. So I hire extra hands and complete my company projects in about a month and a half, pay everyone and collect the final payment from the customers. Then I call all the contractors I know and some of my competitors who would be interested in scoring my company's equipment. So I do a cash-only auction a couple days later. I probably only recoup 5% of the value, but I got rid of everything in a day or so the wife couldn't possibly sell it. After I finished the paperwork, I shut down the business and closed all the bank accounts. I also closed all my remaining personal accounts. So here's why I have a question. I get you don't want her to get a dime, and it sounds like obviously she would get her pound of flesh, but if you're closing down your company, you've withheld future earnings, and dudes have lost their jobs, and you sold everything for pennies on the dollar, like 5%. Major fire sale here. Financially, even if you split things 50-50, you'd be getting a hell of a lot more, and you still keep the company. Even if she got part of the company, you can still make a lot of money and recoup that later on in time. That's the question I have here, as well as some other things. Again, I get you not wanting her to get anything, and you can always start over, but there's, as you can see where I'm going with this. But then again, I guess this guy's like, I'd rather burn it to the ground than let her have a dime. He says here, now I'm ready to see my wife cheating again. Yep, she must have been having the time of her life while I was away diligently working on our future. It was surprising how little she called or texted, although I pretended to be too busy or tired to talk long when she did. Yeah, she's loving it. She's like, he's building our future home, and she's there effing Mr. MySpace. I call the wife to let her know I'm ready to show her the new place. And before I pick her up, we get a U-Haul to move that weekend, and after loading it, I pretend to pass out before she tries touching me. The next day, we take a few trips to move everything in, eat out, and I pretend to pass out again after getting back from the restaurant. Basically, anytime I'm home, I pretend to be addicted to the Xbox or pretend to be out to keep her touching me, which definitely seemed to get on her nerves. So you move everything into this new place, which actually you're just renting, making her think it's your new home, and then, well, you can all see where this is going to go. The next day, I go to deal with a company emergency, but really meeting a realtor to get rid of the old house and company office as fast as possible. It takes about 2 weeks to close the deal on a massively reduced cash offers for both. So I print out the photo I screenshot of her and the affair partner. I write a note about getting sent the photo from an anonymous account just to make her suspicious who would betray her. I write that I had a train booked to a fictitious location at 5 a.m., so I'd be gone before she even woke up. I hid it so it was ready for when I leave in the morning. The next morning, I leave a note on the kitchen table, and before driving my truck off and looking for the earliest opening dealer, I take the garbage offer with the addition of them driving me to the airport. Oh, I take their garbage offer for his truck, a shit deal. That's what he meant. So I purchased a ticket to the next open flight to an exotic sounding location and started backpedaling around for a while. Backpacking. I can't read today. Backpacking around for a while. So now he has gotten the hell out of Dodge, sold everything off. She's there in that rental, even though she thinks they own it. And obviously he's moved money overseas, and he's just traveling the world. Eventually, I started using all the cashier's checks to start setting up checking and investment accounts in a few different countries. I even had my name legally changed to make it harder to track me down. I've lost a good amount of money through early withdrawal taxes and exchange fees, but I still have more than enough to comfortably live just off of dividends, especially considering how much cheaper it is outside of Europe or the United States. Currently, I've made myself a nice cabin in the woods a few miles inland, and a little houseboat for when I feel like exploring the nearby oceanside towns or go diving. One last thing I've observed is half of the local ladies with an older rich husband or rich foreign husband have younger buffer beach boyfriends on the side. Unfortunately, cheating seems to be worldwide. And that is the quick story there about the guy who burns it all to the ground to make sure she doesn't get a penny. Now, again, I'm going to go back to what I said early on. Wouldn't have been it. I know it chapped his ass for her to get a piece of anything, given what she did. 2 years into the marriage and cheating and all that. And I don't blame him. But even if she got half, he still would have a hell of a lot more money, and assuming ownership in his company, and eventually could recoup what was paid out to her in settlement one way or another over time. And you know what I mean? But then again, he didn't want her to have a dime. And I think he ever started another business again. But obviously he made so much money early on. I don't know if he made it all on his own. He inherited some of his wealth, combination of the other. But hey, if this is true, no offense, but if this is true, and he's happy, okay, he's happy and he's living off the money he has. And she obviously was left with nothing. And they probably told her, by the way, this is a rental, get your shit out or pay. But it makes me think of the story of Jeff Bezos. A few years ago, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, he and his wife, Mackenzie Bezos, were getting a divorce. And I don't know exactly what number she got, but she got tens of billions of dollars, a fucking fortune, which incidentally, she's already given away half her wealth, according to something I read recently. And she's already been married again and divorced since she ended it with him. And a lot of people were thinking, oh my God, this poor Jeff, he lost it now. No, he's not. Because the odds are great. Amazon, being one of the most valuable companies in the world, will continue to do things right. And the value of Amazon, as well as the value of his ownership in Amazon, will go through the roof in the decades to come. Not to mention his Blue Origin business, which may do very well in the future. But anyhow, so that was the small price he paid. Well, it was enormous at the time, but looking in the future, it may seem like a small price to pay to get rid of Mackenzie, and he can then grow his businesses in the future. So that's why I'm thinking about this guy. It may have been a small price to pay for what she would get out of this, but he can keep growing his company in the future. I think you know what I'm talking about here. But anyhow, this is what he did. That'll be an entertaining story, and he was making sure she wasn't getting a freaking dime. But you know what, bro? This is obviously a long time ago. If you're happy, you're happy, that's great, and you have plenty to live on, and you provide us with a good story. Anyway, guys, it's a quick one, but I thought you'd find it entertaining. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below and know what you think about this. And guys, if you got a good story you want to share, definitely email to me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Just give me some time to get to it, and I definitely will. And also, guys, if you've got a question to ask me for the Ask SSM series, send it in. Put Ask SSM in the subject. Ask me your question. It could be a paragraph long. It could be a couple pages, whatever. Just make it easy for me to read. As well as any good, crazy stories you got, send that to me too. I can cover in the other channels, They Did What or SSM Clips, which you all should join, because whenever you join my other channels, you piss off a feminist. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.